Hercules Hernandez was a beast in the ring. 275 pounds of solid muscle, swinging a steel chain like a gladiator ready for war. He looked unstoppable, a powerhouse built to dominate. But what if the very thing that made him a legend also sealed his fate? In the 1980s, wrestling wasn't just about skill, it was about size. The bigger you were, the more fans cheered, and the more promoters pushed you to the top. Hercules fit the mold perfectly. From the small wrestling territories to the bright lights of the WWF, he battled the biggest names in the industry. Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, and even the $1 Million Man all stood across the ring from him. Whether playing the villain under Bobby the Brain Heenan or fighting for the fans, Hercules left a mark wherever he went. But behind the muscles and the fights, there was a darker truth. Keeping a superhuman physique came at a cost. The pressure to stay massive was relentless, and wrestlers often pushed their bodies beyond their limits. For Hercules, that punishment was catching up. Then, in 2004, the unthinkable happened. At just 47 years old, he went to sleep and never woke up. His sudden death left fans shocked, but the warning signs had been there for years. What really happened to Hercules Hernandez? And was his tragic end inevitable? Stick around, because this story is far more shocking than you think. Before he became Hercules Hernandez, he was Raymond Fernandez, a kid from New York City who had no idea he was destined for greatness. Born in 1956, Ray's early life wasn't easy. When he was just 6 years old, tragedy struck. His mother passed away from cancer. It was a loss that shaped the rest of his life. His father, searching for a fresh start, moved the family to Tampa, Florida. It was there that Ray discovered the one thing that gave him purpose: wrestling. In high school, he was a natural. Strong, quick, and determined, he dominated his opponents. Match after match, he proved he wasn't just another athlete. He was something special. But wrestling wasn't his only test of strength. After graduating in 1974, Ray joined the United States Air Force. It was there that he developed the toughness that would define his career. The military didn't just train his body, it hardened his mind. He learned discipline, resilience, and what it truly meant to push past limits. When his service ended, he faced a tough decision. What now? That answer came when he crossed paths with Hiro Matsuda, a legendary wrestling trainer known for his brutal methods. Matsuda didn't take it easy on anyone, but he saw something in Ray. He pushed him harder than ever before, shaping him into a force to be reckoned with. By 1979, Ray stepped into the ring for the first time as a professional wrestler. He adopted the name Hercules Hernandez, and it didn't take long for people to take notice. His incredible strength made him stand out, but it was his endurance and skill that made him a real threat. Hercules started in smaller promotions, learning the business the hard way. He traveled from city to city, taking on challengers in tiny gyms and packed arenas alike. In places like Florida and Texas, he built a reputation as one of the toughest new wrestlers in the game. But he wasn't meant to stay in the shadows. In 1982, he entered the NWA Central States Territory, where he won multiple championships and proved he was ready for the next level. The wrestling world had its eyes on him. Hercules was on the rise, and nothing was going to stop him. At least, that's what he thought. Before we continue with the video and dive deeper into Hercules Hernandez's rise in the wrestling world, I'd love to ask for your support. I'm working towards reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your subscription would mean a lot. If you enjoy this content, consider hitting that subscribe button. It really helps. All right, let's get back to it. By the early 1980s, Hercules Hernandez wasn't just another rookie. He was a powerhouse on the rise. His incredible strength and intense in-ring style made him a standout in every promotion he worked for. But in wrestling, raw power isn't enough. You need to prove you belong. And Hercules did just that. His journey took him to the NWA Central States Territory, where he made an immediate impact. He formed a dominant tag team with rugged wrestler J.J. Dillon, capturing the NWA Central States Tag Team Championship not once, but twice. However, it was his singles run that really turned heads. Hercules won the NWA Central States Television Championship, a title that had to be defended almost every week. For 6 long months, no one could take it from him. But one opponent changed everything: Harley Race. A former NWA World Champion, Race was one of the most respected and feared wrestlers in the business. When Hercules stepped into the ring with him, fans knew they were in for a war. Their matches were brutal, two powerhouses colliding with no room for weakness. It was the kind of rivalry that got people talking. Then came Oliver Humperdinck, a sneaky, loudmouth manager who wanted to control Hercules. Their feud escalated until there was only one way to settle it: a steel cage match. Trapped inside, Hercules fought like a man possessed. Both men left bloodied, but Hercules walked out proving he wasn't just a bodybuilder in wrestling boots, he was the real deal. That match was a turning point. Bigger promotions had taken notice. Japan called next, and Hercules found himself wrestling in All Japan Pro Wrestling, where the fights were even tougher. Japanese wrestling wasn't about entertainment, it was about proving you were a warrior. Night after night, Hercules battled some of the hardest-hitting wrestlers in the world. His style fit perfectly, and he held his own against the best. But the biggest opportunity was still ahead. Jim Crockett Promotions brought him back to the US, teaming him with the legendary Jody Hamilton as part of the feared Masked Assassins. At Starrcade 1983, wrestling's biggest event of the year, Hercules and Hamilton took down Rufus R. Jones and Bugsy McGraw, proving once again that Hercules wasn't just big, he could win when it mattered. Not long after, he joined Mid-South Wrestling, one of the hottest promotions in the country. There, he battled some of the toughest competitors, including the brawling hacksaw Jim Dugan. His time in Mid-South was crucial. He sharpened his skills and toughened his persona. Then, in 1985, the biggest call of his career came. The WWF wanted Hercules. Vince McMahon was building the most dominant wrestling company in history, and Hercules was exactly the kind of powerhouse they needed. He had made it to the big leagues. But he had no idea that his biggest battles, inside and outside the ring, were yet to come. By late 1985, Hercules Hernandez had arrived in the WWF, the biggest wrestling stage in the world. This was where legends were made, and now it was his turn to prove he belonged. His first big moment came when he was paired with the legendary classy Freddie Blassie, one of wrestling's most iconic managers. Blassie made sure Hercules looked like a star, decked out in gladiator-style gear, complete with a steel chain that quickly became his signature. But the real test came in 1986 at WrestleMania 2, where he faced one of the best technical wrestlers in the world, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Steamboat was faster, more skilled, and a fan favorite, but Hercules brought the fight. He came close to victory, but in the end, Steamboat found a way to win. Still, Hercules had made an impact. He wasn't just a big guy, he could go toe-to-toe with the best. Then, everything changed. Blassie retired, and Hercules' contract was sold to Bobby the Brain Heenan. This was more than just a storyline, it was a full transformation. Under Heenan's guidance, Hercules became more aggressive, more dangerous, and more dominant. His Roman gladiator gimmick was dropped, replaced with a darker, more brutal image. The steel chain he once carried as a prop now became a weapon. His biggest moment came on November 29, 1986, when he faced Hulk Hogan for the WWF Championship on NBC's Saturday Night's Main Event. It was the biggest match of his career, and for a moment, it looked like he might actually defeat the most famous wrestler in the world. Hercules locked Hogan in his devastating torture rack submission hold, and for the first time, fans saw Hogan on the verge of tapping out. But Hogan was Hogan. He powered out, landed his signature leg drop, and pinned Hercules for the win. However, something unusual happened. Even in defeat, Hercules' reputation skyrocketed. He had nearly beaten the biggest name in wrestling, and fans took notice. His next major feud was with Billy Jack Haynes, a fellow powerhouse. The rivalry reached its peak at WrestleMania 3, in front of 93,000 fans in the Pontiac Silverdome. The match ended in a brutal double countout, but Hercules made sure he had the last word, beating Haynes senseless with his steel chain after the match. Then came the Ultimate Warrior. Their legendary clash started with a simple test of strength, a tug of war over Hercules' steel chain. The moment the chain snapped in half, the feud exploded. It all led to their showdown at WrestleMania 4, where Warrior barely escaped with a win. Hercules had proven himself as a top-tier competitor. But the business was changing, and the world he ruled was about to leave him behind. In the world of 1980s wrestling, size was everything. The bigger you were, the more fans wanted to see you, and the more promoters pushed you to the top. For Hercules Hernandez, having an impressive physique wasn't just an advantage, it was a necessity. When he first entered the WWF, Hercules was already a powerhouse. But under Bobby the Brain Heenan's management, he became even bigger. His muscles grew thicker, his veins bulged, and his entire look transformed into that of a true superhuman warrior. But getting that big wasn't natural. The wrestling business was filled with dangerous shortcuts, and like many others in his era, Hercules likely turned to performance enhancers to keep up. During the 80s and early 90s, steroid use was an open secret in professional wrestling. Many stars felt pressured to use them just to maintain their spot in the industry. Hercules' increasing size came with a price. His mobility in the ring started to slow down. Fans noticed that he wasn't moving as quickly as before, and his matches became more about brute strength than skill. While he was still a force to be reckoned with, younger and more athletic wrestlers were starting to steal the spotlight. In 1988, the biggest shift in his career happened. The $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, claimed that he had bought Hercules as his personal bodyguard. But instead of playing along, Hercules snapped, declaring that no man owns Hercules. The moment turned him into a fan favorite overnight. However, despite his new popularity, his career started slowing down. His body had taken years of punishment, and the wrestling industry was beginning to change. By the early 90s, the WWF was moving away from overly muscular wrestlers, focusing more on athleticism and storytelling. Hercules tried to adapt. He formed the tag team Power and Glory with Paul Roma, and for a brief time, it seemed like he had found a second wind. But at WrestleMania 7, everything came crashing down. In less than a minute, the Legion of Doom destroyed Power and Glory, making it clear that the era of muscle-bound brawlers was fading. Hercules was now on the losing end of most of his matches, often putting over younger talent. His once dominant presence had been reduced to a mid-card attraction, and fans who once feared his strength now saw him as just another wrestler trying to hold on to his spot. His size had made him a star, but in the end, it also made him a relic of a past era, one that wrestling was leaving behind. By the early 1990s, Hercules Hernandez was no longer the unstoppable powerhouse he once was. The wrestling world was changing, and big, muscle-bound brawlers were being replaced by faster, more athletic stars. As the industry moved in a new direction, Hercules struggled to keep his place. His final years in the WWF were a tough road. After the humiliating WrestleMania 7 loss to the Legion of Doom, his team with Paul Roma, Power and Glory quickly fell apart. Roma moved on, and Hercules was left without direction. He was still strong, still intimidating, but his mystique was fading. The company had once pushed him as a dangerous villain, but now, he was being used to make younger stars look good. Wrestlers like Mr. Perfect, Big Boss Man, and Sid Justice all picked up wins over Hercules, solidifying his fall from grace. Even his 40-minute showing in the 1991 Royal Rumble couldn't change his fortunes. By 1992, his time in WWF was over. Still determined to keep wrestling, Hercules sought new opportunities. He briefly worked in WCW, but the company had no real plans for him. He found more success in Japan, where his powerhouse style was still appreciated. Teaming with Scott Norton, he formed the Jurassic Powers and even won the IWGP Tag Team Championships in New Japan Pro Wrestling. But while Japan gave him a second life in wrestling, his body was breaking down. Years of punishment, heavy lifting, and wear and tear had taken their toll. He wasn't moving like he used to, and injuries started piling up. As the 90s went on, Hercules drifted into the independent scene. He wrestled in smaller promotions, taking matches wherever he could. The bright lights of the WWF were gone, replaced by dimly lit gymnasiums and smaller crowds. For many wrestlers, this was the harsh reality of life after the big leagues. By 1999, he knew it was time to walk away. After 20 years in the business, Hercules retired. He had battled some of the biggest names in wrestling, won championships, and entertained millions of fans. But like so many wrestlers from his era, he left the business with a body that had taken more than it could handle. Hercules Hernandez had once been one of wrestling's most feared competitors. Now, he was just another name from the past. But the real tragedy wasn't that his career had faded, it was what happened next. After leaving wrestling, Hercules Hernandez disappeared from the spotlight. For years, he had been one of the toughest, strongest men in the industry. But once the cameras stopped rolling, once the matches ended, he faced a new challenge: life after wrestling. Like many wrestlers from his era, his body had taken a serious beating. Without the constant grind of training, travel, and competition, he began to slow down. His physical decline wasn't just from age. Years of extreme training, brutal matches, and injuries had left lasting damage. He had spent decades pushing himself to the limit, building his body into an unstoppable machine. But there's always a price. By the early 2000s, his health was failing. Then, on March 6, 2004, tragedy struck. At just 47 years old, Hercules went to sleep in his Tampa home and never woke up. His sudden death shocked fans, but for those who knew the realities of wrestling, it was all too familiar. The official cause of death was heart disease, something that had claimed the lives of many wrestlers from his era. In the 1980s and early 90s, wrestling demanded superhuman athletes. Fans wanted larger-than-life heroes, and promoters wanted the biggest, strongest wrestlers possible. To keep up, many wrestlers turned to performance enhancers, painkillers, and other substances just to stay in the game. Hercules was no exception. He was known for his incredible size, but maintaining that body wasn't easy. The constant training, heavy weightlifting, and non-stop matches took a serious toll. Wrestlers were expected to perform night after night, even when injured. There was no off-season, no time for recovery. If you slowed down, you risked losing your spot. Former wrestler Mario Mancini later revealed just how easy it was to cheat drug tests during that time. According to Mancini, Hercules once asked him for help passing a test. The solution? Simply use clean urine from another wrestler. There were no officials in the testing room, no strict monitoring, just a system that looked official on paper but was easy to beat. The real concern for Vince McMahon and the WWF at the time wasn't steroids. It was social drugs. If they had cracked down on marijuana and other recreational substances, they wouldn't have had enough wrestlers to put on a show. As a result, steroid use continued unchecked for years. This raises a difficult question. Was Hercules' fate avoidable? If wrestling had stricter health policies back then, could his life have been saved? If there had been real drug testing, better medical support, and a focus on long-term health, would Hercules have made it to old age? Sadly, he wasn't the only one. Many wrestlers from his era suffered similar fates, dying young from heart issues, drug abuse, or the long-term effects of their in-ring careers. Names like Mr. Perfect, Curt Hennig, Rick Rude, and the British Bulldog all faced early deaths, largely due to the same issues that plagued Hercules. But what do you think? Was this just the nature of the business back then, or could more have been done to protect wrestlers? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. While his death was tragic, Hercules Hernandez left behind a legacy that fans will never forget. He was one of the most intimidating forces in the ring, a man who made opponents think twice before stepping inside the ropes. His career was filled with memorable moments that proved just how tough he really was. One of his biggest matches came in 1986 when he faced Hulk Hogan for the WWF Championship on NBC's Saturday Night's Main Event. Millions of fans watched as Hercules nearly pulled off the impossible, forcing Hogan into his torture rack submission hold. For a moment, it looked like the unbeatable Hogan might actually tap out. The crowd was stunned. But, as always, Hogan found a way to fight back. He powered out, hit his signature leg drop, and scored the win. Still, that match cemented Hercules as a legitimate contender. Even in defeat, he had proven he could hang with the best. Then came his legendary feud with the Ultimate Warrior. It all started with a simple test of strength, a tug of war over Hercules' steel chain. The moment the chain snapped in half, the war began. At WrestleMania 4, the two powerhouses collided in a match that had fans on their feet. Warrior barely managed to escape with a win, but once again, Hercules had shown the world just how dangerous he was. While Hercules had some of the best moments of his career in the WWF, his downfall was swift. As wrestling evolved, his style became outdated. He went from being a feared competitor to just another name on the roster. By the early 90s, WWF had moved on to newer stars. Hercules was used to put over younger talent, losing more often than winning. The same company that had once built him up as an unstoppable force slowly phased him out. After leaving the WWF, he found success in Japan, teaming with Scott Norton as the Jurassic Powers. They won the IWGP Tag Team Championships, proving Hercules could still dominate when given the chance. But back in the US, his career faded. By 1999, he quietly retired. He had spent 20 years in wrestling, fighting some of the biggest names in the industry, but in the end, like so many others, he left with a broken body and little recognition. Hercules Hernandez was a warrior. He fought hard, entertained millions, and left his mark on wrestling history. But his story is also a warning about the cost of wrestling's brutal demands. So here's the final question for you. What was Hercules Hernandez's greatest moment in wrestling? Was it his match with Hulk Hogan, his battles with the Ultimate Warrior, or something else? Let us know in the comments. And before you go, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. Thanks for watching.